Hi, good morning, and welcome to this ZP webinar on FoodSense. So we do this webinar every Wednesday. We try to do it approximately 8 a.m. London time, but when we've got travels and stuff like that, it does mean that we shift it around. But I'm going to go forward anyway. And so I just want to touch upon support. So this webinar is really part of our support program at ZP and part of our support program specifically for the FoodSense product. And in this webinar, I like to deal with questions that have come up during the week. So this particular webinar, the kind of question came up on my radar something like Thursday, Friday last week, and today is Wednesday. So essentially, there was a weekend, which is not working days, but we jumped straight on these things. So just to talk about support in general. So if you're a FoodSense Gen 4 user, this is by far the easiest product for us to support in our FoodSense generations, because we've had Generation 1, Generation 2, Generation 3, Generation 4. First thing, everyone gets personal training. So in this particular case, these people haven't had personal training, but they're going to require it, so I'm going to have to iterate that a few times. We have our weekly webinars, so I'm able to get on these things quickly, and because we do it weekly, then there's not this massive delay in coming up with a coherent idea as to what's happening. And when we do monthly webinars there's also a demonstration as well, and we do go into the science of this a lot deeper. Today I'm only going to reference very briefly the science. I'm not really going to do the science too much. In terms of monthly webinars, I have put this link underneath this video already. So what do I want to say about this monthly webinar is there's one on the 14th of December. There'll be lots of science in that, and also lots of demonstrations as well. So if you're a FoodSense customer, especially if you're Gen 4, we can really help you. And that's going to touch upon that in a bit. It's because even in this particular scenario, even though the people using the technology ultimately are in India, I'm in Vienna at the moment. I'm in Austria at the moment. We've got a scientist also in India who's directly dealing with them. And then I've got another scientist in Norway. And all of us can actually see the raw data. And this is the power of the Gen 4 product. So what's great about it is it's not speculation as to what's going on. We can see the raw data. And you can compare that with HPLC, because everyone holds HPLC up in a super high regard when it comes to capsaicin measurement in things like chillies. But actually, you never see the raw data. So the kind of numbers that you get are not covered. I'm just referencing that we did a live streaming demo the other day with TechNando. Hopefully I've got a link underneath here. And in here I do deal with the science of why we do certain dilutions, and it is dealt in there as well. I also touch upon the HPLC, being careful about HPLC. But I'm going to not redo that webinar today. I'm going to be a bit more efficient. So I have just sort of named it. I realize we need a catchy name on this. It's not super catchy, and I'm sure a better name will evolve. But let's call it the ZP500 rule. So the ZP500 rule is how to estimate your dilution. Now, I'm sure these people have already seen this, but I will repeat it now and sort of emphasize what I think is happening here. So if you think your sample is 0 to 5,000 Scoville heat units, so for example, Tabasco sauce, they ship at 2,500 to 5,000 Scoville heat units. If you think your product is in that hotness, then do a 1 in 10 dilution, because 5,000 divided by 10 is 500. If you think your product is in the approximate range to 5,000 to 50,000, then do a 1 in 100 dilution. And this is where it's interesting to see, because these people are essentially on the border between are they 50,000 or are they higher? So they're on that kind of border, so it's sort of kind of a grey case. But in that case, do a 1 in 100 dilution. If you think you're sort of 50,000 to 500,000, do a 1 in 1,000 dilution. But this is kind of like, we aren't trying to make the rules simple, but there is a greyness. If my product is 50,000, do I do 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000? Well, the nice thing is ZP can help you, because we can see your data if you choose to share it with us. And that's easy to share with us. Don't worry about that. And then if it's really hot, then you may be doing 1 in 10,000 dilution. So I cover this in, for example, the Technanda webinar, which is linked to underneath here. If you get stuck, then we're here to help, which is what we are doing. As I say, that's also in a webinar. So we have a G4 client, great. They're testing a couple of products. I've kind of slightly hidden up the names of these products. And as I say, they're kind of 55,000 Scoville heat units. That's definitely bordering. Is it above 50? I mean, it says literally it is above 50,000, but I do talks on, you know, the accuracy of HPLC. So they've got these two samples. One's at 67,000, one's at 55,000, and I suppose, you know, because they're approximately 50,000, they have used the 1,000 dilution. In fact, the 1,000 dilution rule. Yeah, if it was 50. So for example, if it was 55,000, the 1,000 dilution rule would mean they were diluting it down to 5,055 Scoville heat units. So they haven't received their training, which is completely fine. That's being organised. So they are diluting by 1,000. So let's say they were approximately 50,000. If we're diluting by 1,000, then essentially when we test it, then it's at 50 Scoville heat units. That's quite low, and we can see that in the data. So therefore, we're going to suggest to them, A, they need not training, but, you know, they can have an online meeting with us. We'll do a demonstration. They can do a demonstration, and, you know, it's a really nice way of everyone being on the same page. But we're going to suggest them, don't do the 1 in 1,000 dilution, do the 1 in 100 dilution. And it's nice this because I can see their raw data, so I can see the absolute size of their signals, and I'll touch upon that in a minute. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is tell them to not dilute quite so much. Because the power of G4 is not only it looks good and it's got a very nice user experience with good mechanical parts and good LEDs, it's also got a nice app. So the app makes it nice and simple, and the app says, you know, do a 1 in 10 dilution, or do a 1 in 100 dilution, do 1 in 1,000 dilution. It has a nice app. And then the app is actually uploading the data to Julie. So even though these people are in India, and so they're in India, today I'm in Austria, but I've been looking at the data. The scientist who's been helping me is in Norway, and then they have technical support also in India. All of us, there's about 4 stakeholders around the table, all in different countries. 2 of them in the same country, another 2 of us are in different countries. 3 countries, 4 people. We can all see the data because the data, they've chosen to share the data with us. They're pushing the data up to Julie, and this is the true power of it. So, you know, we know what we're looking for in the data, and then because they're doing that, I'm able to leverage the team. So FoodSense it's a technology with real people using the products, and when real people get, let's say, stuck, or, you know, got questions, then we can actually look at the data, and then I can leverage the team. So you can see that, you know, a really good technology is about good fundamental science. So this science came from the University of Oxford, a gentleman called Richard Compton. Good development of the science, ZP, you know, we're ISO 13485. There's an amazing technology stack of sensors, hardware, app, cloud database, signal in the cloud, and then an entire team behind it as well. So we know what we're looking for, and they shared the data with us. So because they chose to share the data with us, and that's really part of what FoodSense is, it's the ability that we can, you know, troubleshoot people. We can see their data. So I know by looking at their data that I can see my sort of chili peaks in there, or my capsaicin peaks, I should say. So I'm happy with that. I can see the intensity of their signals. Their signals are very small. You know, they're not the big intense peaks I'm expecting. They're very small peaks, which is fine. It's because it's a 1 in 1,000 dilution. So there is no criticism of them. It's a slight over dilution. Well, not slight. I mean, we're going to suggest them to do a 1 in 100, and then everything should pop out as opposed to being a little bit small here. But we can see their peaks, and we can also see that some of these peaks are quite small, and it's because of the dilution. But this is something that I'll bring up in a minute. With HPLC, you kind of get this, you know, you get this number. It says 55,000 Scoville heat units. What evidence, you know, other than the statement, there's very little evidence for it. If you look at the AOAC HPLC methods, it's quite convoluted. The somebody puts the sample on a column. It goes sometimes through a UV reader at the end of it, and they get a chromatogram out. And then that chromatogram has to get converted into a concentration using a calibration slope. But you have very little control or insight into that. That's fine. So if you have an expectation it's 55,000, that's fine. I mean, the nice thing about FoodSense is we can actually dig down and find out what it really is, because we can see the literal signal for this particular molecule. So, which is nice because we can actually compare it against other materials. So here I've got a whole range of different materials that were all diluted 1 in 100. It's not fair with this client because theirs is the S chili and they've done a 1 in 1000, but we can see what they could benefit from is not doing quite such a high dilution. So we're going to tell them to not dilute too much. Again, I have talked a lot about HPLC. It was covered in one of my previous webinars, but at this point, the fix is the ZP team is reaching out to provide online training, and I think our first suggestion is going to be do a 1 in 100 dilution, and if as long as that data gets uploaded to Julie and is shared with ZP, then we can see do these peaks only pop up, and it's not over diluted, let's say. So the next steps are training and test at 100, not 1000 dilution. As I say, it's no criticism of anyone. This is the beauty of what we've got, that we can bring these kind of PhD chemists in and actually look at the data. So some of us are really quite steeped in analytical science, and that was always our intention, was how can we make a robust technology that people who are remote from us are using. For example, if you're sort of dealing with a remote analytical lab like an HPLC, it's very hard for you to get to see the actual raw things of what's going on. So you take the certificate, you see the signature, and you say, right, okay. But if you ever want to question it, it's very hard to actually question it. With this case, anyway, we're gonna next steps training, and we're gonna also try and get them to do a 1 in 100 dilution, and then hopefully, well, not hopefully, there's no doubt about it, everything will pop out, because if you obviously decrease dilution, then the analyte is at higher concentration, in this case, which is capsaicin. We'll see it. Don't forget that we do have another live streaming webinar on the 14th of December, and that's important because it will show you. We'll show you there as well that prepare a sample, put a sample on the sensor, put the sensor on the hardware, run it on the app. The app will upload it to Judy, and we can show you that entire workflow. What's nice about this is it's all covered by an original patent from the University of Oxford, and that allows us to really kind of talk about this. So let me put a little thank you here. If you've got any questions from ZP, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So this webinar is that commitment, which is weekly webinars to quickly understand any issues or questions that come in during the week. Everyone gets training if they're especially on the G4 customers, and there's also monthly webinars just to kind of help new people or to give new users, or let's say potential users, training as well. So I hope that you will sign up for those webinars. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.